It's been months since I went back to the site, since I found my uncle lying on that altar, since the shadow touched me. I haven't been the same since then. It's like something followed me back. Not physically, nothing anyone else can see, but it's always there, in the corner of my vision, just out of reach. The whispers are louder now, clearer. They don't stop, even when I'm awake. I hear them everywhere, in the wind, in the hum of the fridge, in the creaking of the floorboards. I barely sleep. When I do, I dream of the cavern, the statues, and the shadow. Always the shadow. And now, it's spreading. 2 nights ago, I woke up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat. I could hear footsteps outside my bedroom door, slow, deliberate, like someone was pacing back and forth. I thought maybe I was still dreaming, but then I heard a whisper, a voice I didn't recognize, but it wasn't just in my head. It was real, coming from outside the door. They're waiting. I shot out of bed, heart pounding, and flung open the door. The hallway was empty, but the air felt heavy, like something had just been there. I stood there for a long time, staring into the darkness, waiting for whatever it was to come back. It didn't, but I knew then that something had changed. The shadow wasn't just in my head anymore. It had come for me. The next morning, I made a decision. I couldn't keep running from this. I had to go back to the dig site, back to the cavern, and finish what I'd started. I didn't know how, but I was sure that was the only way to make it stop. I packed a bag, grabbed a flashlight, and made the drive back to Kogi. The villagers avoided me this time, their eyes downcast, whispering to each other when I passed. They knew something was wrong. I could feel it in the way they moved, in the way they refused to look at me. But no one said a word. When I arrived at the dig site, it looked the same as before, abandoned, overgrown, like no one had been there in years. But I knew better. I could feel the pull, the heaviness in the air. The passage was still there, hidden behind the stone slab. I didn't hesitate this time. I crawled through the narrow tunnel, the whispers growing louder with every step. When I reached the cavern, I stopped cold. It was exactly the same. The statues, the altar, the shadow, everything was there. But this time, something was different. My uncle was standing at the altar. He looked wrong. His skin was pale, almost translucent like before, but now there was something in his eyes, a darkness, like the shadow had gotten inside him. He didn't move, didn't acknowledge me. He just stood there staring at the altar. I called his name, but he didn't respond. That's when I noticed the others. Lined up around the cavern, standing between the statues, were the rest of the dig team. They were motionless, their eyes wide open, blank, just like my uncle. And just like him, they weren't breathing. They weren't alive. But they weren't dead either. They were taken. And then I felt it, the cold, creeping sensation of the shadow as it moved. It was behind me now, blocking the tunnel, trapping me inside the cavern. The whispers were deafening, filling every corner of my mind. But now, I could understand them. They're waiting. You must join. I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't move. The shadow was wrapping itself around me, tightening like a noose. My chest felt heavy, like I couldn't breathe. I could feel it pulling me toward the altar, just like it had pulled my uncle and the others. The shadow wanted me to take my place among the statues, to stand there, frozen in time, forever. But then, I saw something. In the center of the altar, where the shadow was strongest, there was a small, glowing object, a piece of terracotta. It was unlike anything I had seen before. Unlike the statues, it wasn't twisted or grotesque. It was simple, pure, almost human. I don't know why, but I knew it was important. I reached out, fighting against the shadow's pull, and grabbed the terracotta piece. The moment my hand touched it, everything changed. The cavern trembled, the statues cracked, and the whispers stopped. The shadow screamed, not a sound, but a feeling, a deep, bone-chilling terror. And then it dissolved, fading into the air like smoke. The weight lifted off my chest and I could move again. I stumbled back, gasping for breath, and looked around. The dig team was gone. The statues were gone. Even the altar had crumbled into dust. It was just me, standing alone in an empty cavern. I don't know what the terracotta piece was or why it stopped the shadow, but I do know one thing. The knock people didn't vanish. They crossed over into something far worse. And whatever deal they made, whatever ancient power they awoke, it's still out there waiting, but not for me, not anymore. I left the site that night and never looked back, but I still have the terracotta piece. It sits on my desk. I survived, or so I thought, but I was wrong. I thought it was over. I thought taking the terracotta piece had stopped the shadow, that I was free, but I can feel it again. It started slow, just a whisper in the back of my mind, easy to ignore. But now, it's louder, stronger, like a weight pressing down on me. I was wrong. The darkness, it's inside me. I don't know how long I have. My chest feels tight, my lungs burn with every breath. The air around me feels thick, like it's trying to suffocate me. I clutch the terracotta piece in my hand, but it's cold now. Whatever power it had is gone. I look in the mirror and barely recognize myself. My skin is pale, almost translucent, like my uncle's was when I found him on the altar. My eyes are hollow, dark. I'm becoming one of them, one of the taken. I try to fight it, but I'm so tired. The whispers are louder than ever, calling me, telling me to let go, to give in. My heart pounds in my chest, each beat slower than the last. My vision blurs, and the room around me begins to fade. I drop to my knees, clutching my chest, gasping for air. The darkness is crawling up my arms now, black tendrils wrapping around me, squeezing tighter and tighter. My breath comes in short, shallow bursts. I know this is the end. I close my eyes. The whispers are all I can hear now. Then, there's a light. At first it's faint, distant, barely more than a flicker in the darkness. But it grows brighter, cutting through the shadow, blinding me. I try to reach for it, but my body won't move. The light gets closer, and I feel warmth. For the first time in days, I feel something other than the cold, crushing weight of the shadow. And then the light clears. I'm staring up at a bright fluorescent lamp. I blink, my vision still blurry, but I can make out a figure leaning over me. A man in a white coat, holding a flashlight to my eyes. "Welcome back, sir," he says, his voice calm, steady. I'm confused, my mind racing. My chest still hurts, but I can breathe. I take a deep, shaky breath, my lungs filling with air. I look around and I'm in a hospital room. Machines beep softly beside me, and the smell of antiseptic fills the air. I try to sit up, but the doctor gently pushes me back down. "Take it easy," he says. "You've been through a lot." I don't understand. How did I get here? Was it real? The cavern, the shadow, the terracotta piece. Before I can ask, the door opens and my uncle walks in. He's alive. He looks healthy, whole, no longer pale and hollow like before. His eyes are bright, filled with relief. He crosses the room in a few steps and pulls me into a tight hug. "I thought we lost you," he says, his voice thick with emotion. "You were gone for so long." I can't speak. My mind is racing, trying to make sense of it all. The last thing I remember is the darkness, the shadow tightening around me, squeezing the life out of me. I pull back from the hug and look at him. "What happened?" I manage to whisper. He shakes his head. "You collapsed at the site. The team found you barely breathing. They rushed you here. You've been in a coma for days." "A coma?" I whisper, my throat dry. "But I saw you. The cavern, the shadow." My uncle's face softens, his eyes full of understanding. "It's over now," he says gently. "You're safe. Rest." I want to believe him. I want to believe it was all just a nightmare, something my mind created while I was unconscious. But as I lie back on the hospital bed, staring up at the ceiling, I can still hear it. Faint, almost too quiet to notice. The whispers. They're not done with me yet.